Hi, this is Tim from InstantPianoGenius.com. And a lot of people who have watched the initial videos explaining the numbering system and how much easier it makes it to find out what scales and chords to play have said they've learned more in those short videos than they have taking months of piano lessons, which is awesome. But a lot of people have also been asking for an easy way to reference the things that I've shown them so they can remember it after they've seen the videos. So I have created a PDF file that has charts that explain everything that I have shown you in the videos so far, and you can download it at InstantPianoGenius.com. So just go there and download it, and I wanted to show you what's in the PDFs right here and explain what's in them before you download it so you can have a sense of what it is. So this is the first chart, and this just shows the numbering of counting fingers, and this is pretty standard. I refer to thumbs as 1 on both hands, and then counting out, counting the little finger as 5. So that's the easiest thing. Now let's move on to how we figure out scales. With the number system, it's easy to figure out and play any major scale, because major scales consist of whole steps except between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8, which are only half steps. So if you happen to be playing in the key of C, you go whole step, and then between 3 and 4, it's only a half step, and between 7 and 8, it's only a half step. Now, that 3, 4, and 7, and 8 is the same no matter what key you're playing in. So in the key of D, there's going to be 2 black notes, but black notes and white notes are the same. It doesn't matter. There's no difference between them. The only thing is that there's a half step between the 3 and the 4 and between the 7 and the 8. And just go back and watch the videos to remind yourself of that. But that's just a quick way to check back to this chart to remind yourself how to play any major scale. Now, once you can play any major scale, it's very easy to play any major chord, because a major chord consists of the 1, the 3, and the 5 notes of the major scale. So 1, 2, 3, and then a half step, and then 5. So what that looks like is with any major chord, which is in the root position, meaning that if you're playing a C, you're playing a C with your thumb, there are always 3 notes between the 1 and the 3 and 2 notes between the 3 and the 5. And in the key of C, those are all white notes, but it doesn't matter what chord you're trying to play. If you're trying to play a D chord, the third note happens to be black, but the main thing is there's always 3 notes between the 1 and the 3 and 2 notes between the 3 and the 5. That's how you play any major chord. Minor scales are just as easy to learn as major scales. The only difference is they are all whole steps except between the 2 and the 3 and between the 5 and the 6. And the key of A minor happens to be all white notes, and there's only half steps between the 2 and the 3 and the 5 and the 6. And if you're playing a different key, like the key of G, there happens to be 2 black notes, but again, the black notes and white notes, that doesn't matter. All you need to know is it's between the 2 and the 3 is the half step, and between 5 and the 6 is the other half step. Now, knowing how to play any minor scale, you can figure out any minor chord. So with a minor chord, the only difference between a major and a minor chord is that the third note is down a half step. So whereas with major scales, there was 3 spaces between the first and third and 2 between the third and the fifth, with a minor scale, it's reversed. So there's 2 spaces, there's 2 notes between the first and the third note, and there are 3 notes between the third and the 5. In A minor, it happens to be all white notes that you're playing, but that's the main thing, is 2 on the bottom, 3 on the top for minor. Just the reverse of major. Now these are minor chords, and this D happens to be all white notes. This E minor is all white notes as well. This C minor has 1 black note, but the main thing to see is that they're all constructed the same way, with 2 spaces, 2 notes between the 1 and the 3, and 3 spaces or notes between the 3 and the 5. So what you've just seen is how to figure out how to play any major and any minor scale, and how to play any major and any minor chord in the root position. Now, your left hand in general does not have to work as hard as your right hand. Mostly it plays single notes or octaves. So if you're playing a G chord with your right hand, what you would do with your left hand is probably put your little finger on a G, which we'd call the 1, and you would put your thumb on, we're going to call it the 8, but what it is, it's an octave above the other G. So you would play an octave there, and that's one way to play a chord. Depending on what you're playing, you may sometimes also play the 5 note of the scale with your second finger. So you would play the 1, the 8 with your first and fifth finger, and then you would also play the 5 note of the scale with your second finger. And that would be exactly the same whether you were playing a major or a minor chord with your right hand, because the 1 and the 5 and the 8 are the same for both a major chord, major scale, and a minor chord or minor scale. Now, if you're playing an A chord, you'd put your little finger there, you'd put your thumb there, and sometimes you would put your second finger on the 5 note. If you're playing a C chord, you would put your little finger there, your thumb there, and sometimes you would put your second finger on the 5th note and kind of roll between them. And this is all explained in one of the videos on PianoGenius.com. So if you're not familiar with what I'm describing here, just go there and watch that free video. Now here's how to start playing passing notes when you're playing regular chords to start kind of sounding like a pro. Now, if you're playing a major chord, a 1, 3, 5, you're playing a C chord, you can just keep playing that chord over and over, but it starts to get kind of boring and it doesn't really sound that great after a while if you're not changing anything. So the second note of the scale is a whole step above the 1, and the 4th note of the scale is a whole step below the 5. So what you can do is, instead of always playing 1, 3, 5, you can, instead of playing the 3, use your second finger to play the 2 note, and then back to the 3, and then you can play the 4th note instead of the 3rd note with your 4th finger, and then back to the 3. And there's a video on InstantPianoGenius.com that explains what that sounds like, so definitely go watch that. But you would just do that with any chord. If you're playing a D chord, the 3rd note would happen to be a black note, but the 2nd and 4th are always one whole step away from the 1 and the 5. All right? Now, minor chords, you can do exactly the same thing. You can play the 2 and the 4 sometimes, and even though the 3rd note is a half step down, because that's the difference between a major and a minor chord, the 2nd note is still a whole step from the 1, and the 4th note is still a whole step from the 4. So you're playing a minor chord, same thing. Sometimes you would play the 1, 3, 5, and then other times, just for a change of pace, you would play the 2 instead of the 3 once, and then back to the 3, and then maybe up to the 4 once, and then back to the 3. And again, you can hear what that sounds like on InstantPianoGenius.com. Now, the number system doesn't just teach you how to play the notes in a chord, it also tells you what chords to play in a song progression, what chords to play that make up a song. Now, if you're in C, then a C major chord would be the 1 chord of a C major scale. If someone told you to play a 2 chord, that would be playing a D. A 3 chord would be an E, and a 4 chord would be a F, and a 5 chord would be a G. Okay? So the 1, 4, 5 chord progression is the most popular chord progression in popular music. It's been used in everything from Twist and Shout, Johnny B. Good, Rock Around the Clock, Old Time Rock and Roll, Great Balls of Fire, Brown Eyed Girl, Margaritaville, practically all blues songs, just literally thousands of songs. And so if someone tells you that you're going to play a 1, 4, 5 song, then depending on what key it's in, you can figure out what those chords are. So in the key of C, if it's a 1, 4, and 5, you're playing a C chord, you're playing an F chord, and you're playing a G chord. Now, if they tell you that you're playing a song in the key of A, and it's a 1, 4, 5 chord progression, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that tells you that you are playing a chord, a D for the 4, and an E for the 5. Now, if someone starts to sing and then they go, hey, that's the wrong key for me, I need to do it in the key of E. You go, oh, okay. Well, in the key of E, the E is the 1 chord, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 4 chord is an A, and the 5 chord is a B. So you're playing E, A, and B. So by knowing what key you're playing in and having someone tell you that it's a 1, 4, 5 chord progression, you can figure out what those chords are, and it doesn't matter what key you're in, which is really awesome. And once you understand how those chords are held together, you'll really be able to expand out and be able to play literally thousands of songs. The chart I just showed you on chord progressions, the 1-4-5 chord progression, by the way, is not on YouTube. That is on instantpianogenius.com, and you can watch it for free by going there, as well as downloading the PDF of the pages and charts that I have just shown you. They really are handy, and you can print them out and set them on your piano, and it makes it really easy to play whatever major and minor chords and whatever scales it is that you're trying to do. So definitely grab that PDF. I hope you found this useful, and keep checking back because we'll be adding more videos. Thank you.